have missed you all. I have not made a YouTube video since January of this year, 2021. So this is literally my second video of 2021. So much has happened, you guys. If you follow me on Instagram, then you already know the big news. But if you don't, I'm going to give you all the details of my big life update. Before I get started, I want to say Happy Nurse Practitioner Week. This is my first time celebrating Nurse Practitioner Week as a nurse practitioner, so I am very excited. You guys make sure you head over to my Instagram. I'll post it right here so that you can enter into my amazing giveaway. I'm giving away some pretty amazing gifts to my supporters, just thanking them for all their support over the years. So let's rewind. Let's go back to the start of my journey. So as most of you all know, I graduated in August of 2020 from Vanderbilt University. I received my Master's of Science in Nursing with the specialty of Women's Health Nurse Practitioner from Vanderbilt in August of 2020. I was able to obtain over 600 clinical hours in high-risk obstetrics, maternal-fetal medicine. That's where I received all my clinical hours from when I was in school at Vanderbilt. So I graduated from Vanderbilt in August of 2020. It was early August. When I graduated, I had no job prospects at all. So I knew I was going to have to start back working full-time as a registered nurse at my mother-baby job, where I was working as a mother-baby nurse. And the fact that I had no job prospects and the fact that I was going to have to start back working full-time as a nurse, and you know, we're dealing with COVID at this time, we're still dealing with COVID, that literally sent me into a depression. I felt like a failure because I saw all of my classmates getting jobs, whether it was at their clinical sites or they were relocating to new areas, and I had no job prospects at all. So this was in the first part of August. So I want to say maybe the last couple weeks of August, I became aware of a women's health nurse practitioner job at a local community health center here. And I had actually done some of my clinical hours at this community health center. So I was like, this sounds pretty promising. I already know the staff. I know the doctors. So I was like, you know, I'm going to use my connections and see what can happen. I let the doctor know who was helping me with my clinical hours at this community health center. I let her know I was going to apply for the job. She sent me the practice manager's contact information. I immediately applied for the job. I emailed the practice manager, let her know I applied, and she was like, okay, Ashley, I remember you. I'm going to pull your application. So she pulled my application, and a couple of weeks went by and I never heard anything from her. So now we're in September. So I was telling my friend Brittany about it, and Brittany was like, why don't you just call and see what's up? I was like, no, I'm too scared to call. So she ended up calling for me. She basically was able to get into contact with the practice manager, and she asked, do you all have any women's health nurse practitioner positions available? And they were like, we just filled that position. Are you interested in any other nurse practitioner positions? And she was like, no, and then she hung up the phone. So she told me, and my heart literally just dropped. Because I'm like, what? I had connections. I knew you all. And I was like, dang. I just sat there and was like, I guess it wasn't meant to be. And like I was saying, you know, during this time, you're watching your classmates. My classmates are passing their boards. They're starting to work at their women's health nurse practitioner jobs. And you like, on the outside, I'm like, congratulations, you all. I'm so proud of you all. I'm happy for you all. But on the inside, you're like this.
Congratulations! Oh my God.
So I literally took a whole month off. I took the month of August off from studying for boards. So I started studying for my board, you know, my women's health nurse practitioner certification exam. Started in September. My original date that I was going to take my boards was October 15th or 16th, one of those dates. And I also made a video about how I passed my women's health certification exam. I'll link it above. So I'm studying for boards, working full time. At this time, I want to say in September was the first time I took care of a COVID positive mom, and that experience was nerve-wracking. I remember calling my mom after after we got our report is where night shift hands off patients to day shift and vice versa. So in report, they told me, hey, you're gonna take care of the COVID positive mom and the baby downstairs. So I was like, okay. So I stepped away from the floor. I went into an empty patient room, and I remember calling my mom and just crying my eyes out. And this is before we even had the vaccine. So I'm literally scared. I'm like, I don't want to get COVID, mama. I don't want to get COVID. I don't want to die. And you know, she's trying to calm me down. Her and my auntie, they end up praying for me. And so I'm dealing with taking care of COVID positive patients, having to study for boards, and also feeling like a failure, going through this post-grad depression because I don't have a nurse practitioner job. So that was a lot. That I can say that's probably been one of the lowest points ever of my life. So October comes and I tell myself I'm not ready for my women's health nurse practitioner board. I'm gonna push it back to November. So I'm still studying, still taking things day by day as best as I can. So late November, another job posting becomes available for a women's health nurse practitioner position at another local community health center. So I'm like, okay, here goes my chance. I have another chance. So I apply for that job, and I got a call back the same day from the practice manager, and she was like, we want to bring you in for an interview. What day works best for you? And I think that was on a Friday. I told her I could come next Tuesday or Wednesday. So they set up an interview for me on that following Tuesday. This Tuesday was, I believe, the start of November, first week in November, one of those. So I'm prepping for my interview. I'm going over interview questions. I'm like, Ashley, you got this. I got people praying for me. I can remember calling my boyfriend on the way to this job interview, and he sung this song to me. The song is by the Miami Mass Choir. It's called It Is For Me. So the song basically saying what God has for you is for you. So he's singing this song to me. It's ministering to my heart. I'm like, okay, God, if this job is for me, then let it be for me. So I went into the interview. It was with the practice manager and 2 other nurse practitioners. I was very happy to see nurse practitioners that look like me, other black nurse practitioners, and they had a black practice manager. So, you know, they're asking me questions. I would say the interview really wasn't one of those, tell me about a time when this happened, tell me about a time when that happened. It was more so they were getting to know me. It was very laid back. So during the interview, I'm like, I wouldn't mind working here. But when we got to the portion of the interview where I asked them questions about the facility and what I would be doing, that's when I found out this position more than likely isn't for me. So with this job, they had never hired a women's health nurse practitioner before. So it would be something where I would have to come in as a new grad and basically just carve out the role for myself. And there wouldn't be any physician support on site. My physician support would be at another clinic. So those were things that were like, this job isn't for you. And I ended up asking them about a specific procedure, and they couldn't tell me about that. So I was like, no. I was like, in my heart, I was like, this isn't for me. And, you know, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I really love what I did during clinicals. And during clinicals, I was taking care of high-risk pregnant women. So pregnant women with any type of condition you could think of, diabetes, high blood pressure, heart failure, asthma, just anything. Pregnant women on dialysis. So that was something that I've always wanted to do. But with this job, you would have to do OB, taking care of pregnant women, and then GYN, so your well women's visits, your pap smears, your IUDs, birth control, and all that. But since I was in my clinicals previously, I was like, I really would not mind a job working in maternal fetal medicine, high risk obstetrics. So even though after I left that job interview, I knew that job was not for me, I still sent a follow-up email thanking them for the interview. But I called my family, called my boyfriend, and I was like, you know what, that job isn't for me. So a couple weeks after that interview, I end up taking my boards. I passed my boards, so I'm excited. I'm like, okay, I got passing my boards out the way. So, you know, jobs can't use the excuse, oh, she hasn't passed her boards yet, you know, as a reason why they wouldn't hire me. So I passed my boards November, get my APRN license December. I'm gonna just plug this in there. I got my first dose of the COVID vaccine in December as well. So, you know, at the end of 2020, you know, we're hearing about the vaccines. Vaccines are becoming available and everything. So now there's this need for nurses at vaccine clinics. So December, January, November, I continue working full-time as a mother baby nurse. I don't like it. I feel stagnant in my career. And I'm like, I need something else. And at this time, you know, nurses, we're like, hospitals aren't treating us right. You know, things are just going bad at these hospitals. So I'm looking for a way out. So February comes and I'm on Facebook just browsing. And I see an ad for nurses to work at vaccine clinics here in the city that I live in. So I was like, you know what, I'm about to apply for this job. So this was February. They immediately called me. I had an interview maybe like a week later. Of course, got the job. I was hired right on the spot. So working at the vaccine clinic was the highest pay I ever made as a nurse. So working at the vaccine clinic, I was paid $40 an hour. Now to you travel nurses, that might not be like a lot to you all, but that was a lot to me because I was working PRN as a mother baby nurse, and that was only $34 an hour. So to me, making $40 an hour and all I gotta do is give people vaccines, I'm like, okay, I'm winning. So, you know, you get the paperwork together. I was set to start in March. So March rolls around and one of the doctors that I work with at my hospital as a mother baby nurse, she sends me a screenshot of an email that says a local university is looking for clinical instructors for their master's program. This school has an FNP program in their BSN program. So she sent it to me because she knew I had a master's and she knew I would be a good candidate for this job. So I immediately emailed the contact that was in this email. I sent them over my resume, cover letter, and I was hired immediately. So I'm thinking, okay, things are starting to look up. I had this vaccine clinic job and I have a job as a part-time clinical adjunct faculty in the FNP program in their women's health clinical course. So I'm like, things are looking up for me. I'm thinking to myself, I'm eventually planning, executing a way for me to exit from the bedside. So around this time, it's like mid-March, late March, the director of my program, of the Women's Health Nurse Practitioner program at Vanderbilt, she reaches out to me. She's like, hey Ashley, we want you and your preceptor to take a picture for Vanderbilt School of Nursing alumni newsletter. And I'm like, okay. So I text my preceptor, she's my mentor. So, and you know, during this whole process, she's checking on me. Have you found a job yet? You need to do this, you need to do that. During this process, she's checking on me. So I text her. I'm like, hey girl, can I come up to the clinic? They want a picture of us for Vanderbilt magazine. She's like, sure, come this day. And also, I'm leaving and I'm recommending you for my job. So I'm like, what? I'm like, what? You're leaving and you're recommending me for your job? So I'm calling my family up. I'm calling my boyfriend up. I'm like, this is it, you guys. This is it. I think this job is the one. So the next day rolls around and I get a call from the practice manager. She calls me from her cell phone. She calls my cell phone and she's like, hey, is this Ashley? I'm like, yes ma'am. And she was like, okay, great, because I remembered your number. Your number's easy to remember. I'm like, God, that's you, that's you. So she was calling me just to let me know that the application was live on the website, and she told me to go ahead and apply so that they can pull my application, because they knew they were about to get bombarded with applications, because women's health nurse practitioner positions are super hard to find in my area. So I ran out the bed. I turned on my laptop. I just started just typing away. I'm like, I gotta get this application in today. So maybe 30 minutes to an hour later, I was finished filling out the application. I already have my resume ready to go. That's what you guys need to do. Always have your resume ready to go, your cover letter ready to go, because you have to be ready. So I called the director back and let her know, and she said, great, I'll go ahead and pull your application. Human Resources will be reaching out to you. So maybe that afternoon, Human Resources reached out to me wanting to set up an interview, and I'm like, okay, God, this is you. This is moving pretty fast. So I set up my interview for Human Resources, which happened maybe a couple days later. So I was nervous. I'm like, I'm prepping. I'm like, okay, God, I know this job is for me. I know this job is for me. But at the back of my mind, I'm like, what God has for me is for me. But I was like, God, I know this job is for me. So I'm prepping for the Human Resources interview. I'm nervous because I'm like, even though I have connections at this job, even though this was my clinical site for like 6 to 7 months, I'm like, I saw what happened back in August when I applied to a job with connections and how that fell through. So I started to doubt myself and even started to doubt God, which is something you should not do. But you know, we all have our moments. We're not perfect. So my interview with Human Resources, it was not even an interview. The Human Resources contact was just telling me about the benefits, and when he got to the salary part, I was mind blown. And it's almost like when he said the salary, it went in one ear and out the other. And I was like, can you please, I was like, sorry, I didn't hear you. Can you please repeat the salary? And he told me the number and I was mind blown. So let's take this back to January. So January of 2021, I did the fast with Mike Todd in Transformation Church. It was a 21-day fast, and I wrote 5 things down that I wanted God to do for me in the year 2021. I can say, I'm filming this video, it's Friday, October 29th. I can say 4 out of 5 things God did for me. So 2 of the things on my list were that I was able to find a women's health nurse practitioner job in my city, and I also said I wanted to be making a specific salary at this job. So when the human resources person told me the salary was about $10,000 more than what I had wrote on my paper back in January. So I'm like, okay, God. And I gave a deadline by April. I said I want a women's health nurse practitioner job in my city making this amount of money by April 2021. And remember, this happened, I created this list back in January, not knowing whether I would get a job or not. I'm just writing down a date. Let's put April 2021. And I put April 2021 because I was trying to decide whether I wanted to renew my lease, or was I about to make the decision to relocate somewhere where I knew I could get a women's health nurse practitioner job. So my lease was up for renewal, I believe, end of May. So I was like, I gotta know something by April. That was back in January. So we're in March. So after my interview with Human Resources, I'm set up for 2 more interviews. So these are panel interviews. Each interview lasted for an hour. So my first panel interview was with the administrative team. So one of the women on my panel interview was our practice director, and you had some other women on our panel interview as well. These are basically the people in leadership roles. So I was very nervous with this interview. You know, I'm thinking, what are they gonna ask me? I'm preparing with situational based questions like, tell me about a time where you experienced conflict, or tell me about a time where you had an unhappy patient. So I'm prepping for questions like that, and let me tell you, they did not ask me anything related to that. So they were pretty much trying to get to know me. So one of the questions they asked, why do you want to work here? Basically, why women's health, why high risk obstetrics? And I told them what I've been telling you guys from the beginning, what I told Emory, Vanderbilt, Texas Women's when I was applying to their universities for their women's health nurse practitioner program. I said my goal is to help women that look like me, African American women. I want to help decrease maternal mortality rates in the African American community. And I said I want to start in my city. That's the answer I gave Vanderbilt, Emory, Texas Women's, and that's the same answer I gave to my panel interview. So one of the women on the panel interview, she was very impressed by that answer. And you know, I didn't say that answer to impress people. That's literally been my mission for years. So they basically asked questions about how could I help with the flow of the clinic. So the second interview was with the physicians. So I was a little bit less nervous. I'm a little bit more comfortable. I know these physicians. They know me. They know how I was during clinical. You know, they've said nothing but great things about me. They know that I'm a great candidate for this position. So I was nervous during this interview too, but not as nervous. So they were asking me about my nursing experience, clinical experience. I remember one question they asked me, what is something I can do to be innovative in clinic? And I said, you know what, I think our patients would really benefit from an app on their phone, because I remember the patients during clinical, they always would be on their phone. No, I think they could benefit from an app, just so that they can be able to be in charge of their care and just being able to look at certain things like their labs and being able to communicate with their providers and things like that. And I remember one of the doctors really liked that answer, because apparently she has been trying to get an app for the patients, and I was like, I really think they would benefit from an app. And those were some of the questions they asked me. I can say during my MP interview, I never got any situational based questions. I'm not saying that when you have an MP interview you won't get situational based questions, but I did not get any during my MP interview. So I was shocked. it's kind of like, you know, I'm preparing for one thing, but then they ask me for another, so I'm having to think of something off the top of my head, and I'm like praying God gives me the words of wisdom that I can speak to, you know, let the panelists know, like, hey, I really want this job. I have a heart for these women. I love everything about being a nurse practitioner in high risk. Even though, you know, my clinicals, I spent 6 to 7 months in high risk, and I can tell you, by the time I finished my clinicals, my preceptor mentor, I was writing notes, I was seeing patients. I would go see the patients first and come back and like give her an update and give her a plan and everything, and then we would go see them together, and she would just ask, do you need anything? Ashley pretty much covered everything. So it felt like I was functioning as a nurse practitioner, so I already knew the ways of the clinic and how the clinic operated. So that panel interview ended. Both of my interviews were each an hour long. So I can remember after my second panel interview, I literally fell asleep for maybe 3 to 5 hours, because it's like you're on a roller coaster of emotions, and it's like now that that interview was over, I was like, whew, I can relax. So I reached out to the human resources contact, you know, just sending up, I sent a thank you email to all of my panelists, which is something you guys need to do. And I also sent an email to the human resources contact just asking, hey, I'm very interested in the position. When do you think you all will have a decision? And basically she told me, hey, we're interviewing a couple more applicants. You should find out something by April 9th. So I'm on pins and needles, and then April 9th rolls around. So it's about the afternoon, and I'm like, I haven't heard anything from them, so I'm gonna email her. So I emailed the human resources contact, and she was like, hi Ashley, we're still in the process of interviewing candidates. We don't have any decisions made right now, so feel free to check back in about 2 weeks. So I said, you know what, I'm just gonna give it a rest. If this position is for me, it's for me. So I think I was working at the vaccine clinic, still working as a mother baby nurse. The semester hadn't started yet for my job as a clinical adjunct faculty. That wouldn't start till May or June, summer semester. So I'm going to Atlanta the next weekend. I'm like, yeah, I'm getting away from the city. I'm about to see my friends. So I go to Atlanta for about 3 days. The next week I come back. I believe that week I might maybe only working 2 days at the vaccine clinic and then 3 days at my mother baby job. So I can remember it was April 21st, which was a Thursday. I was at my mother baby job, and everything wrong that can happen is happening. So I'm stressed out. I'm at my wit's end, and I'm like, you know what? I told one of my coworkers, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna put in my 2 weeks notice. This is gonna be y'all's last day seeing me. And they was like, why Ashley, why? I was like, I'm tired, I can't do this anymore. I'm gonna go full-time at the vaccine clinic, and that's just what I'm gonna do, because this job is just becoming too much. I'm unhappy here. This is not for me. So I'm literally having a breakdown at work, and I can remember it's April 21st in the afternoon. I go downstairs, I have an admission, a baby is born. You know, we have to go through the admission process, doing the physical exam, giving baby eye ointment, hepatitis B vaccine, the parent wants it, vitamin K shot, going through all that. So I remember getting back to the nursery, sitting down, I'm charting, and my phone rings. I look at my phone, and it's the human resources person calling me. So I'm like, oh my goodness, I start screaming. And my coworker next to me, she like, Ashley, what's wrong? What's wrong? I'm like, 1 second, 1 second. So I answer the phone, and the human resources person, they're like, hi, may I speak to Ashley? I'm like, hey, this is she. They're like, hey, how are you? I was like, I'm great, how are you? So, you know, we're making small talk, and they're like, hi, I just was calling to let you know we want to offer you the position as a nurse practitioner in the maternal fetal medicine department. Y'all, I screamed so loud. Y'all should have heard me. I know all the patients on our unit heard me. Nurses down the hall heard me. I was so happy. I said, yes, 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 I'll accept, y'all don't know, y'all just don't know. But I was so happy. I was so happy. I wanted to cry right then and there, but I said, yes, I'll accept. And I remember the human resources person I was on the phone with, they were like, oh my God, I've never had anybody this excited when I offered them a job. And I was like, I'm just so happy. I'm just so happy. And the human resources person basically told me I made their day just based off of my excitement. So I get off the phone with the human resources person. I call my mom, call my dad, call my boyfriend, call my friends, and just let them know the good news. Of course, my coworkers are coming into the nursery. They're congratulating me. And I'm like, I'm finally getting away from this place, and I'm finally about to do something that I love to do. And don't get me wrong, I did love being a mother baby nurse, but just the pandemic exposed a lot of things wrong with healthcare, and I just was like, I have to go. I can't do this anymore. So I accepted my offer, had to sign my offer letter about 2 days later, and then I was sent paperwork, my credentialing paperwork. So I'll probably do a whole nother video about the credentialing process. If you know, you know. The credentialing process can take anywhere from 60 to 90 days. That's basically how they legitimize you as a nurse practitioner. I call it an extensive background check, where they're getting all in your business. They want to know, of course, your basic personal information. Also, you know, like a background check. They check into your previous malpractice insurance. They want to make sure you don't have any pending lawsuits against you, any pending malpractice suit. You know, they're calling your old jobs and everything. So it's like an extensive background check. They're getting all into your business. So they projected me to start in my nurse practitioner position in August, and I was like, dang, I gotta work at the vaccine clinic till August. So I put in my 2 weeks notice to my mother baby job in May. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna work the vaccine clinic until August. And mind you, during this time, it's getting hot outside. Our vaccine clinic was outside. We were under tents with air conditioning. It's getting hot outside. Wasps are coming out. Bees are coming out. So I'm like, oh no, God. Oh no, God. Please, please get my paperwork in there sooner. So the way the credentialing process worked at my facility, basically the credentialing committee meets at the beginning of the month, and privileges aren't granted until the end of the month. So some sort of way, my paperwork was turned in. They got everything checked out. Everything checked out for me. So my privileges were granted at the end of June, which gave me a July start date. And so many people were surprised that I was starting in July. They was like, wow, we're so shocked that your credentialing process happened so fast. And I'm like, that's what happens when you have God on your side. I started my new job as a nurse practitioner July 6, 2021, which was a full circle moment, because that's when I started my job as a mother baby nurse, July 6, 2015. So 6 years later, I'm starting a brand new job, starting my brand new career on the same day that I started, you know, my nursing career 6 years ago. That was another moment right there that let me know that this job was for me. God had my back this whole time. And you know, some people ask me, you know, would I go through this experience again? I said yes, I would go through it again in a heartbeat, because it taught me a valuable lesson. You cannot find your identity in anything else except for Jesus. You can't find your identity in your job, in your career, in money, in different things, because at the blink of an eye, those things can change. You can lose your job, you can lose money. Those things are fleeting. Jesus is never fleeting. And looking back, I was in a completely different headspace last year than I am today. I went through a depression last year, which is why y'all really didn't see me a lot last year. And you know, I know people have done studies about, you know, post-grad depression, but Jesus, there needs to be more studies done on that, because that is very intense. And you know, I'm happy I was able to get through that depression, and I'm happy I'm in a whole new space right now. I'm happier, healthier, and hoping that I can, you know, resume making content for you all. These have been a busy couple months as I've been getting acclimated to my new role and learning everything I can. I say every day I go to work, I'm learning something different. You know, this job keeps me on my toes, because these pregnant women that I'm taking care of, my patients, they are very sick. And you know, you're trying to make sure mom and baby stay safe to delivery and postpartum, and hopefully, you know, they're set on a path to have great outcomes. So you know, I'm on my toes with these patients. I'm always critically thinking. This job requires a lot of critical thinking. Not saying that my nursing job didn't, but after a while, my nursing job, I was getting stagnant. Everything was just I'm like, okay, I've done this already. Like at my nursing job, I know, okay, either it's going to be a vaginal delivery or a C-section. If mom has complications, baby has complications, it's nothing that I haven't seen before. So that job was becoming routine. I was getting stagnant. I was just tired of doing the same thing every time I came to work. But with my job as a nurse practitioner, I'm enjoying my new role. I love it so much, and you know, I love how my patients are happy to see somebody that looks like them. I've gotten so much praise, compliments when I walk into that room, and you know, my patients see, hey, I'm